I stood in the funeral home parking lot, my hands shaking as I stared at the eviction notice my daughter had just handed me. 3 days. That's all Karen was giving me to pack up 40 years of memories and get out of the house Margaret and I had built together. Dad, I'm sorry, but this is what Mom wanted. Karen wouldn't even look me in the eye as she said it. Her husband Brad stood beside her, arms crossed. That smug expression I'd learned to recognize over the past year. The will is very clear. The house goes to me, and you need to vacate by Friday. But your mother and I talked about this, I said, my voice cracking. We agreed the house would be mine until I passed, then split between you and David. Well, apparently Mom changed her mind. Brad spoke up now, his voice sharp. Sometimes, elderly people make decisions their spouses don't know about. It happens. Elderly. The word stung more than it should have. I was 62, for God's sake, not some confused old man. And Margaret had been 60, sharp as a tack until the very end. The car accident that took her life 2 weeks ago had come out of nowhere. One moment she was driving home from the library where she'd worked for 30 years. The next, her car had veered off Route 40 into a concrete barrier. The police said her brakes had failed. Just one of those terrible things that happens. I watched Karen and Brad drive away in their Mercedes, and something cold settled in my chest. Something wasn't right. Margaret and I had talked about our wills just 6 months ago, sitting at our kitchen table with our lawyer, Frank Morrison. We'd both been very specific about our wishes. The house would be mine for as long as I lived. David and Karen would split everything 50-50 after I was gone. But Karen had shown up at the funeral with a different will, dated just 3 weeks before Margaret's death. A will I'd never heard of, never seen, that left our house entirely to our daughter. I drove to my son's apartment in silence. David had offered to let me stay with him, at least until I figured things out. He taught history at Roosevelt High School, lived in a small 2-bedroom place near the school. We'd always been close, but the past year had put distance between him and his sister that I didn't fully understand. Dad, there's something wrong with this whole situation, David said that night as we sat in his cramped living room. Mom would never cut you out like that. And the timing, right before she died. Your sister says it's legitimate. She had it notarized, witnessed, the whole thing. By who? Did you recognize the witnesses? I hadn't thought to look. I don't know. Frank Morrison wasn't the lawyer on it. I know that much. David pulled out his laptop. We need to fight this, Dad. This isn't right. But I was tired. Bone tired. Margaret had been my whole world for 43 years. We'd met at a church social when I was 19, and she was 17. Got married 2 years later, raised 2 kids in that house on Maple Street, and now she was gone. And I was being thrown out of our home by our own daughter. That's when my phone chimed with an email notification. The sender was Margaret's email address. My heart stopped. The subject line read, "For Robert, if you're reading this, I'm gone." My hands shook so badly I nearly dropped the phone. David grabbed it from me, his eyes going wide as he read the screen. Dad, when did this come in? Just now. But that's impossible. Your mother. It's a scheduled email, David said, his fingers flying across his laptop keyboard. Look, it was set to send exactly 2 weeks after the accident. She must have used a delayed send service. With trembling hands, I opened the email. My dearest Robert, if you're reading this, then my worst fears have come true. I'm so sorry, my love. I wish I could have told you everything while I was still with you, but I couldn't risk it. They were watching too closely. I need you to access my cloud storage. The password is the name of the street where we had our first kiss, followed by our wedding date and numbers. Inside, you'll find 31 folders. You need to see everything, in order. Please trust me. Please be strong. And please, protect David. I love you forever. Margaret. I stared at the email for a long time. David read it over my shoulder, his breathing quick and shallow. Dad, what street was that? Riverside, I whispered. We kissed for the first time on Riverside Drive, by the old bridge. And we got married June 14th, 1982. David typed it in. Riverside 061482. The cloud storage opened. 31 folders, numbered sequentially, each one labeled with a date. The first was dated 8 months ago. I clicked on folder 1 with shaking hands. Inside was a single video file. I pressed play, and Margaret's face filled the screen. She was sitting in our bedroom, the afternoon light coming through the window behind her. She looked healthy, vibrant. This was months before the accident. "Hi, sweetheart." Her voice came through the speakers, and I felt tears streaming down my face. "If you're watching this, then I'm gone, and I'm so sorry. I need to tell you something, and I need you to watch all of these files in order. Don't skip ahead. Don't stop. You need to see everything." She took a deep breath. "About 8 months ago, I started noticing something strange. Karen and Brad came to visit, which was unusual because, well, you know, Karen hasn't been around much since she married him. They wanted to talk about our estate planning. Brad kept asking very specific questions about the house, about our life insurance, about my retirement account from the library. On screen, Margaret's expression grew troubled. At first, I thought they were just being practical, but then Brad said something that made my blood run cold. He said, "It's such a valuable property, Margaret. Worth at least $800,000 in this market. Must be hard knowing that equity is just sitting there when you could be using it." Robert, we'd never discussed the house's value with them. Never. I started paying attention after that. Real attention. And what I found, she paused, her eyes filling with tears. What I found terrified me. The video ended. I sat frozen. David's hand was on my shoulder. "Open folder 2, he said quietly. Folder 2 contained dozens of screenshots, text messages between Karen and Brad. I read them with growing horror. Brad, "The house is worth $850K minimum. Once the old man's out, we flip it in this market. Clear $300K easy." Karen, "I know, but Mom's not budging on the will. She keeps saying everything's split with David." Brad, "Then we need to change her mind. Or change the will." Karen, "How?" Brad, "Leave that to me. I know a guy." The messages went on. Plans to forge a new will. Discussion of a lawyer who'd do it for the right price. And then, most chilling of all, Brad, "The car angle is cleanest. Make it look like mechanical failure." Karen, "I don't know if I can go through with this." Brad, "You want to keep living in that shoebox apartment while your inheritance sits in a house your father doesn't even need. He's got his postal pension. He'll be fine in some retirement community." Karen, "What if something goes wrong?" Brad, "Nothing will go wrong. Trust me." I couldn't breathe. David had gone pale beside me. "Dad, they killed her. They killed Mom." "We don't know that yet," I said. But my voice sounded hollow even to my own ears. "Let's keep going." Folder 3 contained audio files. Margaret had recorded conversations. I pressed play on the first one. Brad's voice filled the room. "Margaret, you're being unreasonable. Robert doesn't need that entire house. He's one person. Karen and I are starting a family. We need the space. Why are you being so selfish?" Margaret's response was calm but firm. "Brad, I've told you. The house stays with Robert when I'm gone. That's final. David and Karen will inherit together after Robert passes. That's what we've decided. What if Robert was open to other arrangements? He's not. We've discussed this thoroughly. People change their minds. We won't. Now, I think it's time for you and Karen to leave. Robert will be home from his evening walk soon." The audio ended. There were 6 more similar recordings. Brad becoming progressively more aggressive, more insistent. And then, in folder 4, something that made my stomach drop. A video file dated 5 weeks before Margaret's death. Footage from our home security camera. I watched Brad enter our garage when Margaret and I were both out. He was there for 17 minutes. When he left, he was carrying our spare house key. Folder 5. More security footage. Brad, returning 3 days later. This time, going straight to Margaret's car in the garage. He spent 45 minutes under the hood. "Oh my God," David whispered. He sabotaged her brakes. Folder 6 through 10 contained Margaret's investigation. She'd suspected what Brad was doing and had started documenting everything. Photos of Brad's car parked near our house at odd hours. Records of phone calls between Brad and someone named Tony V. Calls that Margaret had traced to a disbarred lawyer named Anthony Vitale, known for producing fraudulent legal documents. Folder 11 was a video of Margaret speaking to the camera again. This one dated 3 weeks before her death. "Robert, I know what they're planning now. I found evidence that Brad tampered with my car. I've been driving very carefully, having the brakes checked every few days at different mechanics. They keep saying everything's fine, but I know Brad did something. I can feel it when I brake. There's a slight delay now that wasn't there before." On screen, my wife looked frightened but determined. "I've set all of this up to protect you and David. I've contacted the FBI. There's an agent named Sarah Chen who specializes in fraud and domestic homicide plots. She's been investigating Brad for other matters already. I've given her copies of everything. But I needed you to have this too, in case something happens to me before they can make their case. The new will Karen is going to show you is a forgery. The real will is with Frank Morrison, unchanged. I made sure. But Karen doesn't know that. Let her think she's won. Let her take the house." Margaret leaned close to the camera. "Because, my love, this isn't about the house anymore. This is about justice. For me, and for David, who they plan to cut out entirely. Watch all 31 folders. Follow the breadcrumbs I've left. And when you're done, call Agent Chen. Her number is in folder 31. The video ended. We spent the next 4 hours going through every folder, each one built on the last. A careful chronicle of Margaret's investigation into our daughter and son-in-law's plot to steal our home and, eventually, to murder her. Folders 12 through 15 contained financial records showing Brad's secret gambling debts. $340,000 owed to some very dangerous people. People who wanted their money within 6 months or else. The house sale wasn't just about greed. It was about Brad's survival. Folders 16 through 20 had more audio recordings. Karen and Brad arguing. Karen crying, saying she didn't want to hurt anyone. Brad convincing her it would be painless, that Margaret wouldn't suffer, that it would look like an accident. "She's old anyway," Brad's voice said on one recording. "She's had her life. This is our turn." Karen had agreed. My daughter had agreed to kill her own mother. Folders 21 through 25 contained Margaret's correspondence with Agent Chen. The FBI had been building a case against Brad for insurance fraud in 3 other suspicious deaths. An uncle who'd died in a fall, a former business partner who'd had a heart attack, and an elderly neighbor who'd succumbed to accidental carbon monoxide poisoning. In each case, Brad had been named in the will shortly before the death, but they hadn't had enough evidence to arrest him. Until Margaret's documentation. Folder 26 was surveillance footage from multiple cameras Margaret had secretly installed in and around our house. Footage of Brad searching Margaret's office, looking for the will. Footage of him following her to the library. Footage of him watching our house from his car, timing her comings and goings. Folders 27 through 30 contained the final pieces. Proof that the will Karen had presented was forged. Margaret had the original compared to the fake by a forensic document examiner. Records showing the witnesses on the forged will had been paid $500 each and had never actually met Margaret. Security footage from the day of Margaret's accident showing Brad's car near the crash site, watching. And then, folder 31, one final video. Margaret, sitting in our bedroom, filmed the day before her death. She knew. She knew it was coming. "My darling Robert," she said, tears streaming down her face. "By now you know everything. I'm so sorry I couldn't tell you while I was alive. I couldn't risk Brad finding out and changing his plans. The FBI needed him to go through with it, to make the attempt, so they could build an ironclad case not just against Brad, but against Karen too." She wiped her eyes. "I've lived a good life. 60 years, and 43 of them with you. I got to raise 2 beautiful children, even if one of them lost her way. I got to work at a job I loved, surrounded by books and students, and I got to fall asleep next to my best friend every single night. Agent Chen promised me they would make sure Brad goes to prison for life. And Karen too, for conspiracy to commit murder. The evidence is overwhelming. But they needed the crime to happen. They needed me too. She broke down, sobbing. When she composed herself, she continued, I'm not brave enough to be bait, Robert. I'm terrified. But I couldn't live, knowing Brad would just try again later, or hurt someone else. And I couldn't let Karen get away with planning her own mother's murder. In this folder, you'll find Agent Chen's direct number. Call her as soon as you've watched everything. She's waiting for your call. She's been waiting since the day after my accident. Margaret leaned forward, her hand reaching toward the camera as if she could touch me through the screen. I love you, Robert James Harrison. I loved you from the moment I saw you at that church social in your awkward brown suit. I loved you when you proposed to me on Riverside Drive with that tiny ring you'd saved for 6 months to buy. I loved you through every argument, every struggle, every moment of joy and sorrow. And I will love you forever, wherever I am now. Take care of David. He's a good man, like his father. And please, please don't blame yourself for any of this. You couldn't have known. No one could have, except me, because I was looking. Live the rest of your life fully, my darling. Find joy again. You're only 62. You have so much life left to live. Don't spend it mourning me. Spend it honoring me by being happy. She smiled through her tears. The foundation I want you to start is detailed in the documents in this folder. Use the life insurance money. The real policy. Not the one Brad thinks he knows about. I have 2 policies. The one for $250,000 that Karen knows about, and one for $1.5 million that I took out 2 years ago, with David as the beneficiary, to be used for the foundation. The Harrison Foundation for Family Justice, to help other families who've been victimized by relatives who put greed above love, to fund investigations, to provide legal support, to make sure that monsters like Brad and Karen don't get away with destroying families. This is my legacy, Robert. Our legacy. Take it and do good with it. I love you. Always and forever. The screen went black. I don't know how long I sat there crying. David was crying too, his arm around my shoulders. Finally, with shaking hands, I pulled out my phone and dialed the number Margaret had left. Agent Chen. A woman's voice answered on the first ring. This is Robert Harrison, I managed to say. I've seen everything. Mr. Harrison, I've been waiting for your call. I'm so sorry for your loss. Your wife was an incredibly brave woman. You knew? You knew what was going to happen? We suspected Brad would make his move soon. We had surveillance on him, but we couldn't arrest him without concrete evidence of the murder attempt. Margaret understood that. She chose to help us build an airtight case. My hands were shaking so hard I nearly dropped the phone. My daughter, Karen. She's going to prison? Yes, sir. The evidence your wife gathered, combined with our own investigation, is more than sufficient. We've been waiting for you to come forward. We couldn't move without knowing you were safe and had seen everything. What happens now? Now? Now you don't move out of that house. You stay put. Tomorrow morning, Karen and Brad will be arrested. Let me walk you through what's going to happen. The next morning, I was sitting at my kitchen table, the same table where Margaret and I had drunk coffee together for 40 years, when the doorbell rang. Through the window, I could see FBI agents in their distinctive windbreakers. I opened the door. Mr. Harrison? I'm Agent Chen. We spoke last night. Is it all right if we come in? I stepped aside. 6 agents entered my house. Agent Chen, a small Asian woman in her 40s with kind eyes, sat down across from me. They'll be here in about 10 minutes, she said. Karen called yesterday demanding to know why you haven't started packing. She and Brad are coming to help you move out. My phone rang. Karen, answer it, Agent Chen said. Act normal. Hello? Dad, we're on our way over. Brad's rented a truck. We'll help you pack. Karen, we need to talk about this will. Something's not right. Dad, we've been over this. Mom changed her mind. It happens. The sooner you accept it, the better. Her voice was cold, impatient. Did she, though? Did your mother really want to throw me out of our home? A pause. Then, "We're 5 minutes away. Have some boxes ready." She hung up. Agent Chen nodded to her team. They took positions throughout the house, out of sight from the front door. When the doorbell rang again, I answered it. Karen and Brad stood there. Brad carrying an armload of empty boxes. "Hey, Dad," Karen said, not meeting my eyes. "Let's get started, okay? We want to be out of here by noon." "Actually," I said, my voice steadier than I expected, "I don't think I'll be going anywhere." Brad's expression hardened. "Robert, we've been through this. The house is Karen's now. You need to accept that." "The house was never yours," Agent Chen said, stepping into view behind me. "And you're both under arrest. Everything happened fast after that." Karen tried to run. Brad actually swung at one of the agents and was tackled to the ground. I watched my daughter being handcuffed in my living room, screaming that this was all a mistake, that she'd never wanted any of this. But I'd heard the recordings. I knew better. The trial took 3 months. I sat through every day of it, David beside me. The prosecutors presented Margaret's evidence piece by piece. The forged will, the tampered brakes, the text messages planning murder, the audio recordings, the financial motive. Brad's lawyer tried to argue entrapment, that Margaret had somehow lured them into the plot. It didn't work. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Guilty on all counts. Brad got life without parole for first-degree murder. Karen got 35 years for conspiracy to commit murder and fraud. She sobbed when the sentence was read. She turned to look at me, mouthing, "I'm sorry, Daddy." I looked away. 3 years have passed since then. The house on Maple Street is still mine. I walk through it sometimes, touching the walls Margaret and I painted together. The counters we chose, the garden she planted. Her presence is everywhere. The Harrison Foundation for Family Justice is in its 3rd year of operation. We've helped 17 families so far. Families who've been victimized by relatives who put greed above love, who've manipulated elderly parents, who've committed fraud or worse for inheritance money. We fund private investigations. We provide legal support. We make sure people like Brad and Karen don't win. David runs the foundation with me. He left teaching to do it full time. "This is Mom's legacy," he says. "We're making sure her sacrifice meant something." I visit Margaret's grave every Sunday. It's in Pine Hills Cemetery, under the old oak tree she loved. Her headstone reads, "Margaret Louise Harrison, beloved wife, mother, librarian, and truth seeker." I talk to her sometimes. Tell her about the families we've helped, about David meeting a nice woman named Rachel who works at the foundation, about how I'm learning to cook the recipes she always made, about how I miss her every single day, but I'm doing what she asked. I'm living. I'm finding moments of joy. I'm honoring her memory by being happy. Last week, I received a letter from Karen, first one in 3 years. She's up for parole review in 32 years, when she's 67 years old. The letter was full of apologies, explanations, excuses. She was influenced by Brad. She never meant for it to go so far. She loves me. She misses me. I read it once, then filed it away with all the other evidence. Because that's what it is. Evidence of who my daughter chose to become. Evidence of decisions she made. Maybe someday I'll forgive her. Maybe not. Margaret's final video keeps playing in my mind. Take care of David. He's a good man. Like his father. David and I take care of each other. We honor Margaret's memory. We help other families find justice. And every night, before I go to sleep in the bed Margaret and I shared for 43 years, I look at that last video one more time, just to see her face. Just to hear her voice telling me she loves me. "I love you too," I whisper to the screen. Always and forever. The foundation is her legacy. The families we help are her legacy. The truth that prevailed is her legacy. My wife knew she was going to die, and she spent her final weeks making sure that her death would mean something, that justice would be served, that evil wouldn't win. She left me 31 folders full of truth, and that truth changed everything.